This is All Things Ansys, a podcast from the technical support staff at PADT. Episode 69. We talk about what is cool in R2 of Ansys Fluent 2020 and look at the second quarter financial reports from Ansys Inc. Hi there, my name is Eric Miller and I'm one of the three owners of PADT, an Ansys Elite channel partner and provider of Ansys products, support, training, and consulting, along with a lot of other things. I want to welcome everybody on this early September Sunday on a sunny summer in what may still be the center part of everyone's COVID-19 journey. It's a bit hot here in Phoenix, so I've been spending the weekend doing baking because my AC is not working hard enough already. I made some dog biscuits, some pasta, and this morning I did English muffins. The house does smell good right now, I have to say. But as I was cleaning yet another bowl this afternoon, I realized I had not yet recorded this podcast episode, and it does go out tomorrow morning. So here I am, taking a little break from other things and talking about one of my favorite things in the world, Ansys. It's hard to believe that this is episode number 69. It seems like yesterday that we were starting recording these things. We will talk a little bit about the listenership and statistics and all that kind of stuff when we get to episode number 75. But I do want to take this opportunity, kind of looking back and realizing how far we've come, to thank all of our listeners, our guests, both inside and outside of PADT, and of course, the wizard behind the scenes who makes all of PADT's content, make sure it's created and is distributed for our users out there who find it useful. So today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to continue our journey through the release 2 of Ansys 2020. And we're going to look at the second most used product, at least for PADT's user base, Fluent. It's the world's premier CFD application. It just keeps on getting better. And as our guest Sina will share, users will especially be happy with the enhancements that make getting all that horsepower even more accessible and user-friendly. So let's talk about what he likes in Ansys 2020 R2.
Okay, well, I want to welcome everybody today with a discussion about what's new in Fluent, released 2020 R2. And joining us today is Sina Ghods, who's one of our CFD experts at PADT. Sina, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more for anybody that's new to the podcast?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Sina. I'm a CFD application engineer here at PADT. I'm with PADT about 3 years, and I'm in the CFD world for 15 years now. And the majority of it, I've been an Ansys user. Mm-hmm. My graduate study background is in multi-phase and combustion, but obviously as an application engineer these days, we cover all sorts of physics. So
we get some interesting ones these days.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So we're here to talk about the new release R2, which came out on time, which we're really happy to see with COVID. I think hats off to the Fluids development team. Really across Ansys, but the Fluids team got a lot done while in the middle of moving home and around the world. That's a very distributed development team, so it wasn't just in Lebanon. It was Lebanon, New Hampshire. It was all over the place. So hats off to them for making the schedule and getting we'll talk about some things that we're really, really happy to see done in these unusual circumstances. And that brings me to my first question is, of everything that was released in this new version R2, what's your favorite? What do you think is going to have the best impact on users?
I think expressions as far as the probably something that was asked for a long time, and the development has started to basically address that request from last year or last release. But it really got a very spike in terms of development and enhancement this release. So before, 2-3 releases ago, or almost a year ago, for something simple, even like a sinusoidal boundary condition input, user needed to write a piece of code, a UDF, a user-defined function, which some people are not necessarily a fan of
Right.
coding. Yeah. Some people love it to do coding for everything. But now so it's interesting as it technically in terms of different physics and different numerical methods, it gets better and better each release. But the look and usability of the software gets improvement. So it's an easier software to work with, and yet it's a more sophisticated software to work with. Yeah, so it's a very great improvement, I think.
So for those that don't know, and it's if they've used say CFX, they're very familiar with expressions. But if they're a hardcore Fluent user, what can you explain what is the difference between a UDF and an expression and how you use it?
Yeah, so basically UDF can have UDF is very popular and still is a very popular capability inside Fluent. It's basically gives the user, and compared to other CFU softwares, is one of the advantages of Fluent. So don't take it wrong. It gives the user the capability to configure the solver to some extent for its a specific application. It's basically a piece of code that you write, and you compile it and you run it in addition to or you basically feed it into the solver. But the point was that for something simple like a mathematical expression for an input, maybe it was not the best way for the user to have that input. Maybe it's easier to just type in a box, the input box, instead of having a piece of code and have it compiled and then feed it into the code. So still, UDF is going to be one of the main Fluent advantages, but for a right purpose, for having a customized, basically setup, not for something simple like expression. So I think that's probably the best way to explain it.
Cool. So like if I wanted to specify an inlet condition that, varied with the radius from the center of the inlet, I just type that equation in now rather than write in a piece of code to do it.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
So they introduced this simple or the first step of having expressions, the last release, something like you said, or having a time variant like sinusoidal, a velocity versus time. And it really got more enhancement this release. So you can have expressions for patching the solution or when you initialize the solution, specifically for multiphase, or as an example for the multiphasic problems, when you have, for example, a liquid or water in some part of the domain and the air in the other part. Before it was not easy. Right now you can have with an if statement, you can if your location is higher than y or lower than y equal 1, something like this, you can patch liquid or any phase inside the solution as initial solution. So one application that not only the input, the initialization patching is now you can use expressions, and probably the most important one and most needed one was having the material properties as a function of some variables. So now you can have density, viscosity, absorption coefficient, those type of material properties as a function of variables such as pressure, temperature, turbulence, viscosity, those things. And it was again before only doable using a UDF. Now you can just type, and you can basically it's in a smart way. It detects that you're typing density or you're referring to temperature or pressure. So this is a very again common usage to have material properties as a function of other variables, but it was not there before. Before you only had some built-in functions like linear or polynomial, piecewise polynomials. Now you can have your own expression to define those type of dependencies.
Very
and
cool.
and another one again related to expression is that you can plot the expression. So sometimes you type an expression and everything sounds good, but when you run the code, it crashes and everything goes crazy. So now you have the capability actually to, before running the code as a diagnostic tool, you can plot your expression.
Nice.
And you can have multiple independent variables. So it gives you an idea of what you're typing as an expression, and the software will see that. And that's going to be a very useful kind of a check, sanity check to make sure that you have the expression in the right format.
Yeah, that's good. I think you're exactly right. Users are going to love that. And it kind of goes back to you don't have to be a expert coder anymore to use these things. So I really like it. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
So another thing that I was aware of, it sounds like that is also something that should excite the users and has been asked for, is enhancements in the meshing module. Is that meshing capability? Is that
exactly
another area that's to look into in R2?
So another very big or a very main road, one of the main paths that Ansys took for Fluent was introducing these workflows for Fluent meshing. And the idea was to, because Fluent meshing before, it was not an easy task. It could be confusing for some users. Now, again, improving the usability and being a user-friendly software, Ansys is trying to guide the users step by step with minimum distraction. They even stay in a single window from CAD to mesh to solver. So it was something that had a great feedback. It was introduced last year. Different workflows. The watertight geometry is the most common workflow people use, and now they started to improve and basically develop it. And one of the main developments that both the watertight geometry workflow and fault tolerant, the other meshing workflow, got this release is wildcards, and it's really useful. So because you have a very complicated geometry with multiple inputs and outputs, for example. Then inside the mesher, you want to select those inlets. You had to either select them from the graphics window or from the list. Now you can use a wildcard with like asterisk, like star sign. You can have N and star, and it goes and looks for all the inlets that you have. So it might look simple, but the main advantage is that first of all, you can record the workflow. So the whole meshing process can be recorded, and then you can apply it or replay it for another geometry. And the point is that as long as you follow a naming convention yourself on your side, for example, if you always name your inlet and the number, inlet 1, 2, 3. If your new geometry has inlets in a different location or even different numbers of inlets, before you had 3 inlets, now you have 5 inlets. Because you use these wildcards, that will pick everything because it has in it and IN star.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's very useful in terms of repeatability and flexibility for different geometries that you use, basically.
So I could see that. I could definitely see. So pay attention when you set up your model to naming conventions for surfaces and volumes and lines and stuff, and you could really save a lot of time, it sounds like.
Exactly. And another big, there are multiple or a few nice enhancements. I just want to highlight two of them. One was the wildcard. The other one is, and I really like it, and I see people using this, is that you can start not from geometry using the Fluent mesher. You can start actually from a surface mesh, imported surface mesh. And this surface mesh doesn't need to necessarily be a Fluent case file or mesh file. It can be a third-party outside Ansys surface mesh. So if your company had a different software before, you used to use a different software to create the surface mesh, you can still use that surface mesh. You can modify it and then use that surface mesh to create the volume mesh, or you can just use the surface mesh to define the geometry boundaries. So basically to define the geometry. And again, this is going to be very handy and useful, because I've seen lots of users that they say, I don't have the geometry, I only have the mesh. And that's totally fine. If you have a surface mesh, you can just read in the surface mesh. If you don't like the quality of the surface mesh that was generated before, you can even modify it, and then you use that to generate the volume mesh. So it's very, very useful. For sure.
That's very powerful. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that is a common thing out there these days, or even not just with legacy, but it just seems like sometimes that's all customers have. So cool.
Yeah,
excellent, very good. So those are two biggies. Meshing and the expressions.
Those
what about
kind of
the biggie?
Tag them as a usability improvements. Not necessarily technical or numerical improvements.
So what? Well, sticking with that though, any changes to the user interface or anything like that?
And then probably the last area that the usability got some improvements is the user interface and graphics and post processing. The most important one, and I really liked it when I saw it first, because I was kind of suffering from this before. Is that now the mouse functions are kind of consistent between the space claim, Fluent Mesher, and Fluent Solver. So before, and now they actually use the space claim as the baseline. They change the
standardize
default.
On that.
Yeah, exactly. So before, used to the rotate and zoom, those things were different from space claim in Fluent. It was really annoying. Now it's consistent. And if you're used to, not necessarily a space claim user, you're just a Fluent user, and you're used to the previous configuration, you can always switch back to the legacy theme. So you can always revert. So that's one thing I really like. And in terms of graphics, they don't show the mesh edges anymore. Kind of make it very more efficient to render and rotate the geometries, and some shortcuts to save the scenes, and contours got a lot of improvements, and color maps. There are some new color maps installed by default, including like high contrast or bandit variant. So in terms of the visualization and post-processing, people are gonna really like the new capabilities.
Yeah, I always struggle with that because I'm so used to the standard color map that when somebody puts a purple and an orange in there, I'm like, wait, what is that? It's funny. It's good to have because, like you said, sometimes you just can't see the variation. You got to have that high contrast. So
it has more flexibility now. You can have a clear stop definition or new color picker dialog box.
Good.
It's better.
So on the more of the technical side and the solver side, what's got you excited?
So in terms of the applications, one of the popular applications these days, obviously, is the battery modeling.
Yes.
That's got a lot of improvements. Fluent has 4 different models, from a very simple conjugate heat transfer, CHD analysis, all the way to a multi-scale, multi-domain analysis. But what is really interesting or important for this release is that they have included the effects of battery life and capacity fade, and they've divided into the long term and short term. So long term is basically it depends on the calendar life effects, deterioration over time, and the cycle life effect after how many cycles the capacity deteriorates. And short-term capacity is basically that depends on the rate of the discharge and the ambient temperature. So you can now have both long-term and short-term effects when you model the battery. And the other application is, which is my background, is multi-phase and DPM. they really covered a gray area before. Now it's very clear. So before, you either had the interface between two phases, larger than your background mesh, or smaller than your background mesh, and then for each scenario you had a different approach, either Euler or a level set tracking method. And there are some applications like fluidized beds that there's actually a transition between these two regimes now. They cover it. So it's really good. If you're a multi-phase user, you'll definitely notice this new capability. And if that transition region is something you work with, you'll definitely enjoy the new capability. And they have added more breakup models as they keep improving the breakup model as well. So besides this, I think one more thing is the Granta material data for simulation. If people are not available of that, basically Ansys Granta Materials Data for Simulation MDS is a product that provides material data for more than 700 solid materials, from anything you can call the metals to ceramics to composites, foams, magnetic materials, polymers, woods. So you still need to have a license for Ansys Granta, but now it's directly accessible from inside Fluent. So once you when you're defining basically the material, you have the option to call the Granta library to read the material properties. So again, if you have a CH2 problems that your solid materials are kind of challenging or not a common material, definitely Granta is going to be very helpful for you.
So not just for the structural guys anymore. It's definitely used, and that's good to know. And I think if you listen to the podcast regularly, you hear us talk about Granta, and we're just at the start of all the things we're going to be able to do. And so no more Excel databases for material properties. That's the goal, right? Solid, exactly. Or text files laying around. So I'm excited about that. Anything else? We kind of covered, I think, the big stuff, but is there anything else you want to share?
I think we covered the most of the improvements. Again, the rest of it would be the details of like numerical enhancements. They would be very technical if I'm going to go over them.
With the two people that listen care about, right? But no, so where would they go to find that? So if you're looking for a new model or numerical method, is that in the release notes? Is that the best?
Yes, exactly. So inside your manual, or if you go to your Ansys folder, there's the Ansys help, and then under the release notes, you can find all the new notes or highlights. One thing I forgot to mention that from this year on, Ansys is going to only have 2 releases. So before, like 2019, we had 2019 R1, R2, R3. But for year 2020, this release, which is 2020 R2, would be the last release. So less release notes for users.
Good point. Yeah, there's always that debate of, do I want those features quicker, or do I want to deal with multiple? Yeah, I think 2 a year is just the right pace. You don't have to wait too long, and but you're not constantly. Seems like you're constantly upgrading your software.
Exactly. So for each year, the second release would be, the first release is around January, obviously, and then second release in June, July. It's their target.
And if they can get it out on time in the middle of COVID, I have all confidence in the world that
they can do it
when things are more normal. Very cool. I'm always excited. I'm always impressed by the amount of new capability they add, and we just hit the surface. There's a lot of very specialized stuff.
Again, as I said, I'm glad that they not only pay attention to the technical side, which makes the Fluent the most powerful CFD code, commercial CFD code, but now they're also really paying attention to the usability and user interface, which is making the user experience is improved significantly.
Yeah. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have a good user interface and user experience and not give up on functionality. I think they've shown that.
Of course.
Yeah, they've shown that. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I, as always, find these very informative, and I appreciate your patience.
Of course. Yeah, my pleasure.
To a mechanical guy like me. And, I thanks a lot. And,
of course.
You just take care of yourself and be safe out there. And we'll talk about something new soon, I hope.
Yeah, soon. Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Yep. Bye.
Okay, great stuff. And that was just the things that Sina thought everyone needs to know about. There's a lot more. So do read those release notes. And if you can't attend or listen to a recording of Sina's webinar that he did a week ago, it's on brighttalk.com. Go there and search for Fluent 2020 R2 and it'll show up, or just visit PADT's page on Bright Talk and you'll see all of our webinars there. And that brings us to a word from our sponsor, PADT. And it seems like a good time to talk about mentoring from PADT. As tools like Ansys Fluent add functionality and expand their application, you may find yourself wishing you had an expert on hand to assist you in planning, setting up, running, and interpreting your simulations. And that is what PADT's mentoring is all about. You are assigned one of our experts in whichever Ansys tool you're using, and they will be your mentor, advisor, personal trainer, therapist, and sounding board as you take on a difficult simulation. The fastest way to build your expertise is to work with a PADT expert. Our mentoring customers tell us all the time that we save them many multiples on what they invested in paying for hours with our engineers. So reach out today to info@padtinc.com and ask to hear more about mentoring. And one of our Ansys certified engineers will get back with you, and let's see how we can help you. So that out of the way, let's talk about how well Ansys did in Q2. I'm going to skip the other news and just kind of focus on this. So let's look at the stock price first. It hit a new high of $319.83, and it closed Friday afternoon at $312.37. That's August 7th. This is up 21.35% year to date. And in the segment, if we look at Autodesk, it's the only one that's doing better. It started a little bit lower, so it's kind of come up a little bit more, I think. I'm not sure. 32.76% increase that they've seen. Altair is up 14.56 and PTC is up 18.29. But if we look at the S&P 500, which is, of course, much, much broader, it's only up 3.66% since January 1. So Ansys is doing really well at 21.35%. Part of the reason for this success may be that Ansys Inc. released their second quarter financials. If you're interested in how the company is doing and what they're thinking and where they're going, I really recommend you go to investors.ansys.com. That's investors.ansys.com. And you'll find a summary of all this stuff that I'm going to talk about right next to a nice video of Ajay, the CEO, sharing the news. And there's an infographic, there's a PowerPoint, there's a lot of the press release, there's a lot of really good information there. So I highly recommend you check that out. Just kind of a summary. In the second quarter, they posted $385.7 million in revenue with an operating margin, the profit basically, of 29.3%. If you look at how they treat acquisitions a little bit differently, how they cost out the cost of buying other companies, which is they call non-GAAP, the profit margin then goes way up to 42.9%. They brought in $131.6 million more than they spent in the second quarter. And that left them with $744.5 million in cash and a little over $400,000 in debt. So they're predicting $1.58 to $1.633 million of revenue in 2020. And some other stuff you dig really deeper in. There's a lot of information there. One of the things I like to look at is, who's buying, what part of the world is buying. So a little bit of a shift towards the U.S. Asia was down a little bit more. The U.S. was up a little bit more. So Asia Pacific was at 28%. Europe was at 25%. And actually, it's Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And then the U.S. was at 47% for the second quarter. As part of their Q2 presentation, they also noted they spent about $300 million on R&D in 2019. And that's both internal investment and acquisition. So if you wonder what they do with all the money, they spend a lot of it on getting more tools in our hands working together. At the young age of Ansys, 50, Ansys continues to do the largest things they've ever done in their life. They had the largest users group meeting in Q2, the simulation world, which I hope many of you took part of. They also did their largest single deal ever with a customer, and they also did their largest, what they call a new business deal. So the amount of new product that a customer bought was the largest ever in Q2. So they continue to grow and expand. In those presentations, especially in the PowerPoint, if you look at it, they talk about how COVID-19 has impacted the business. And I think this is important to look at. They pointed out that most of their employees are working remote, but some offices are reopening with limited customers in them. A big change is that travel is very restricted. Where they can go, especially internationally, is very restricted. And this is impacting how they do business. It's yet to be seen if it is positive or negative, but they're adapting well. I know that when we work with the Ansys Inc. folks, we find ways to make sure that we're communicating with the customers, even if no one can get on a plane. The other thing is they really have managed to minimize the financial impact. They've not had to reduce wages or make any changes to how they pay their employees. Most of their problems have been with companies that can't work remote. So if they can't work remote, they can't get to their Ansys software, then they're not going to be buying more. So they're seeing a little bit of that, not a huge amount. As you can see by the numbers, it obviously wasn't a massive amount. The other thing they're seeing is that payments, according to these reports, this PowerPoint, the payments are getting delayed by some of their customers, and Ansys is balancing that by taking advantage of the ability to delay their payments for various taxes in various jurisdictions. One of the economic stimulus capabilities, at least here in the U.S., is companies can delay making their deposit with the Treasury for the employee taxes, like Social Security and things like that. So it's all in the books, but from a cash flow standpoint, it allows them to offset how some of their customers are asking for longer terms or being a little bit later in paying. So far, everything looks pretty good. That's all I got for news. I'm not going to talk about articles or anything like that. I think that covers enough for today. I do want to point out our next webinar at PADT. It's called Optimizing Electronics Reliability with Ansys Sherlock. We're huge fans of Sherlock. If you work with printed PCB boards of any kind, you need to take a look at that product. Even if you're using it now, definitely check out the webinar. It's going to be on the 19th of this month at 11 o'clock Phoenix and Pacific. And you can go to our website and look at the events page to learn more about that. That's www.padtinc.com/events. And then I just want to point out for those of you who are listening from Arizona or who want to attend an Arizona event, we are hosting our 5th networking event for Arizona technology business people. It's at www.padtinc.com/network, and it's going to be on the 22nd. We did one this past Thursday, had 111 people sign up for it. It was a lot of fun. The hour and a half went really fast. Everybody really enjoyed it, got a lot of good feedback, and everybody wants to do it again in 2 weeks. So that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to really talk about any other events or anything. There's not much else going on out there. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at www.padtinc.com/opt-in. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you aren't already. Make sure it gets downloaded to your device so that when you want to listen, it's there. Spread the word. Let other people know about the podcast. We love to get new listeners. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out. Everybody have a great couple of weeks, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us for the All Things Ansys podcast, episode 69. As a reminder, this podcast is not affiliated in any way with Ansys Inc., and the opinions expressed are those of the people on the show only and not of their current or former employers. For more information, visit www.padtinc.com/blog, and please share your thoughts and questions through an email to podcast@padtinc.com. See you next time.